everybody, welcome back to the show. This is The Mental Breakdown. I'm your host, Joey Velez. Today's topic is about cognitive distortions. Now, I know it may sound like a complicated psychological term, but it's actually something that every athlete experiences. So like if you've ever had the thought of, oh, I missed that shot, I must be terrible at this, or if I don't win today, then my season is a total failure. Those aren't facts, those are actually cognitive distortions. Now, our brains are designed to make quick judgments, especially under pressure, and sometimes those judgments are accurate, but oftentimes they're biased or even exaggerated. And these thinking errors can increase anxiety, can lower our confidence, and ultimately hurt our ability to perform. Now, let's look at a few of the most common distortions that athletes experience and one of those is an all or nothing thinking. This is the belief that performance is either perfect or terrible and there's no in between. An athlete might think, if I don't play my best game, then I completely failed. The problem is that athletic performance exists on a spectrum. You can compete well without being perfect. Growth happens in that gray area, not just in the wins or in the losses. So instead, try asking, what did I do well today? And what's one thing that I can improve upon for tomorrow? Then there's also catastrophizing. This is when the mind automatically jumps to the worst possible situation. For example, if I strike out here, then the coach is never going to trust me again. One mistake suddenly becomes a career-ending event in your mind. Now, what's the reality is that most performances are made up of dozens or even hundreds of moments. Right? One mistake rarely defines an athlete unless they allow it to affect everything that follows. Another distortion is mind reading. This is where athletes often assume that they know what everybody else is thinking. Coach thinks I'm lazy. My teammates think that I don't belong here. The truth is, we have very little evidence for these assumptions. Instead of guessing what others think, focus on what you can control, which is your effort, your preparation, and then even your attitude. Another one is overgeneralization. Now, this happens when one bad performance becomes your identity. I had a bad race, that means I'm just not fast enough. One poor performance becomes I always choke. Elite performers understand something important, and that performance is data, not your identity. One event gives you information, not a permanent label. The next one is discounting the positive. So some athletes accomplish incredible things, but immediately dismiss them. Yeah, I won, but the competition wasn't that great. Or I only played well because I got lucky today. When you continually dismiss your successes, confidence has nothing to build upon. Confidence grows when you acknowledge evidence of your preparation and progress. So, what can you do when you notice these distorted thoughts? The first step is awareness. So, ask yourself, is this thought completely true? What evidence supports it? What evidence challenges it? If my teammate said this about themselves, what would I tell them? Often, what you'll find is that your inner critic is much harsher than you would ever be towards someone else. Another helpful strategy is to replace that judgment with observation. Instead of saying, I'm terrible at free throws, say, I made 6 out of 10 today. My goal is to improve my consistency. Now, notice the difference there. One statement attacks one's identity, where the other one focuses more on improvement. The world's best athletes aren't mentally strong because they never have negative thoughts. They're mentally strong because they don't automatically believe that every thought they have is true. They recognize distorted thinking, they challenge it, and they redirect their attention towards what matters the most, which is the next play, the next repetition, or the next opportunity. So this week, I want you to pay attention to what your inner dialogue is. When you notice yourself thinking in extremes or expecting the worst, or defending yourself by one mistake, pause and ask yourself, is this a fact or is this just a cognitive distortion? Changing the conversation in your mind can change the way you perform. So remember, your thoughts influence your performance, but they don't have control over it. And that's what I have for you all today. Okay, thank you for stopping by and listening to another episode. Don't forget to download, rate, review, and share the podcast with your family and friends. I want to expand this podcast as much as we can. Appreciate y'all stopping by. And don't forget, today's a great day to make an impact on someone's life. All right, y'all. Have a good one.